Good evening, everyone. Calling the meeting to order. It is the Board of Selectmen's meeting for June 25th at 7:15 p.m., and we are in the Selectmen's chambers. With us today, on my right is Selectman John Hurd. I'm Selectman Dan Dunn, Selectwoman Diane Mahan, Selectman Kevin Greeley. We have Town Manager Adam Chapdelaine with us, Town Council Doug Heim, and Board Administrator Marie Krapelka. And I don't have anything pithy else to say this morning, this evening, so I'm just going to jump right in. So first up, we have FY19 water sewer rates, MWRA debt shift. Mr. Chapdelaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have two matters we wanted to discuss with the board tonight regarding water sewer rates, with the hope of having a discussion, receiving feedback, and then coming back in either the July or the August meeting to then ask for the board's further consideration and hopefully approval of what we want to talk about tonight. So it's segmented into two parts. One is generally the need for us to talk about and ask for approval for increases in the FY19 water sewer rates, and then additionally to show the board some information regarding the MWRA debt shift and what a slow rollback or just a rollback in general of that debt shift would look like in coordination with the anticipated excluded debt related to Arlington High School. That's long been a goal of the board to consider rolling that back to sort of soften the impact of high school debt. So we want to talk about that, answer questions, and then come back with further scenarios in that regard. So in terms of the FY19 water sewer rates, the board may recall that the last time they had to vote an increase in water sewer rates was FY14. So it's actually been quite a while since rates had to be increased for water sewer. The board probably recalls that was a pretty substantial rate increase back in FY14 that was designed to create new tiers, create a new billing structure for fire alarm systems and the base meter fee or the administrative fee, and was also primarily based upon a usage assumption that was pretty flat from what usage had been for the prior years, several. What ended up happening in reality is usage has gone up from what was estimated back in FY14 and stayed pretty level since it went up, but we've been billing for more water, collecting more rates. That has made it such that we didn't need to ask for rate increases and also built up a reserve within the accounts, within the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund. Fast forward to FY19, we are now in a situation where we're no longer projecting to be putting stuff into reserve and rather taking money out of reserve to operate. That's lining up with the DPW facility renovation coming up in the capital plan, and the current capital plan calls for money to come out of the general fund, as you'd expect for the DPW operating departments, but also for money to come out of the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund because of the large part that they inhabit within the DPW facility. So we are projecting, or we want to propose, that we are going to use some of the reserves that have been built up to go towards that capital project, as well as building into our expense projections for the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund debt service associated with the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund's share of that project. So based on all of that, what we wanted to talk with the board about tonight was the need to propose a 5% increase in water rates effective September 1st for FY19 and a 4.5% increase for sewer rates for FY19. If you want, I can talk about the debt shift now or maybe answer questions about that. What do you think? It's up to...
Whichever way. Yeah, I'd say
keep going.
Unless there was a burning question, I'd say let's keep going.
Okay. Yeah. So to talk about the debt shift, there's a new set of slides on paper that I provided to the board tonight. They've been updated from what was included in Novus for the board's packet. And they're also up on the screen as well. So I'm just going to try to set some context for the board and everyone watching. So the first slide is what we currently have for exempt debt, or let me start at the bottom. The orange, or the bottom piece of the pie, or piece of the chart, is what the MWRA debt shift represents in terms of total dollars. Right above that, in red, is the exempt debt that we have for all other school projects that have been exempted. Mainly, I believe that's still the Pierce, and then the Gibbs, portion of the Thompson, portion of the Stratton. You see in the red. The green above that is related to Minuteman debt, and then the checked line on top is what we anticipate debt will be in regard to the high school, related to the high school project, and when it will start to come on, or when the taxpayers will feel it. And that's in just total amount. So you see it's about, just over $20 million in total debt service payments on an annual basis. If we go to the next one, Mike. This next chart shows that in terms of what that means to your average taxpayer's bill. So on an average single-family home assessed at $655,000, that's the math around what an average assessed value is on a single family in Arlington. That's what the annual impact is. So it's that same order, MWRA debt shift at the bottom, other exempt debt in the middle, green is Minuteman, and then the hatch mark or the check mark is what we anticipate the high school impact to be. So you'd see at its height in FY23, what that means total, and I'm not talking in terms of increases, but just the total portion of the tax bill, excluded debt, and the MWRA debt shift would be about $1,400 total for your average taxpayer. So if we go to the next slide, Mike. This is one scenario that Sandy Pooler, the deputy town manager, worked up in what it would look like if we started to reduce the MWRA debt shift by 10% a year, starting in FY19. So you can see it slowly starting to roll off, and it takes the peak off how high the taxpayer impact would be in total dollars on the taxpayer. So you can see how that shaving of the peak, in the first year, it's probably about $180 of tax impact reduced, and then rolls down from there as other debt is retired. If you go to the next slide, Mike. Uh-oh.
That's on it.
No more slides? All right, something happened on there. Well, you have it in front of you, but I'll describe it to you. So this is, the next slide should have been 25%, reducing the MWRA debt shift by 25% a year, so that happens much more dramatically. And what you can see is that pretty significantly shaves off the peak of what the taxpayer impact is, brings it down by nearly $400 a year in terms of taxpayer impact if we did 25% a year until it was fully eliminated in FY22 would be the last year, so fully eliminated in FY23. So then the next three slides show what that means for water rates. So the first three slides I just showed you talked about what the impact would be on tax rates. The next three slides show what the corresponding impact would be on water and sewer rates. So the first one, rate impact of 0% annual shift, so we just kept everything as it is. What we're projecting is, as I mentioned a little earlier, 5% rate increase for FY19, 4.5% increase in FY20. When debt starts to come on for the DPW building, 8.3% in FY21, 6.1% in FY22 and 23. That's the blue line on the sheet you have. The red line is what that means in dollars to your average ratepayer. So based on the average amount a household uses in terms of water, sewer, what the dollar impact would be.
Is that the bottom line? I can't see the colors.
The bottom line, yes. It's the one that, and maybe better to see the one that has a dollar sign in front of the numbers, if you can make that out.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
The next slide is what that same idea if we did the 10% annual reduction in the debt shift. So you can see in FY19, we would still start at the 5%. The rate increase, though, in FY20 would be up just over 8%. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 8%. In FY21 would go up to 11%, and then down to 8.9, 8.4. And then you can see, again, the solid dollar amounts, $65, $111, $169, $147, and then descending back to 93.
One question, and maybe the chairman, because my eyes, for the 10% annual shift, I can't exactly see what it says.
Yep.
FY21, is that 11.9%, which means 12, or is that 11.5%?
11.5.
11.5. I couldn't make out
Yeah, no,
5
I'm
from the 9.
sorry.
Sorry.
And then for the last option, the last slide, would be if we chose the 25% impact. So to not read them again, you can see pretty significant percentage impacts based on the rolling off of the debt shift, and then the dollar amount, also pretty significant amounts, though we haven't yet overlaid them, and I would suspect that's something the board would want to see. It appears to me as though the increase in the water sewer rates is not as much of an increase as there would be a decrease in the tax rates, and that's probably some split in the math between the average tax bill and then the average household usage bill.
Tell me again how the average water bill is defined in this.
Mike, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Hi, Mike, introduce yourself. Thank you for coming.
Not just for the slides, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't even do that right. Mike Rademacher, Public Works. Thank you for having me. The average, the MWRA compiles usage data for all communities, and there's an accepted national standard, but then there's also actual average for each community in the MWRA. The average national standard is 100 cubic feet. In Arlington, it's closer to 60, 100 cubic feet per year.
And is that just like the basic average residential bill, or is it?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
We could, and I think we did this the last time we talked about rate increases. We showed a range. You know, I remember the chart clearly. We sort of had average in the middle, but then we showed like if you use 20 CCFs, but if you used 120 CCFs, what those different impacts are.
And the dollar amounts for those that's the annual rate
Increase.
Increase.
Yeah, not
right.
not incremental.
Other, Diane?
Just because math's not my strong point. And I know you say you base it on the average of 655,000 for all these graphs and computations. Can you just sort of ballpark with what I think is maybe the prevailing, at least what's on the table right now, if we raise the water rates by 5% and the sewer rates by 4.5%, kind of in the gamut of using that 655, what those two combined might mean approximately dollar-wise?
So Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're saying that combined in FY19 would be that average of $65 per household increase.
Is that right? Okay. On the 655?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, that's on the 60 CCFs. So there's not a mathematical correlation between your property value and how much water you use. I mean, it's more a matter of how many people live in your home, if you have irrigation. So better to connect the average user than to say the average assessed home value for the rate impact.
So you're saying the average water usage is this 60 CCF figure?
Yes, in Arlington.
Which I
yeah.
know my house is more, but, okay. I mean, it's a two-family, so.
Yeah, well, yeah.
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 John?
This chart where we see the 5%, so that is assuming that we approve the 5% increase.
That's a projection
right?
if
So
you approve
that's-
it, yes.
So this like 8% is 3 over the 5%, right?
Which year are you looking at?
So we're at 5, and so I'm looking at the 0% annual shift. So 5%,
That's-
so it's 8% over now. So we
So
assume
that-
we increase it 5%. That's where it starts.
Yeah, the 0% means not shifting any of the MWRA debt shift off of the tax rate. That's what
Right.
that 0% refers to.
Yeah. But
Right. No, I mean where it says 5%. This is where we would be
That's
if
where
we
we would be.
approve the 5% increase
Correct.
that you recommended.
Correct.
And then the 8% would be 8% over the year before.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a couple questions I'm not seeing. So if we talked about doing the debt shift in this 10%, in the one, for instance, the 10% per year, you said that the first year, so I guess I'm looking at this, I think the first year would be FY 2020. I think that's the way I'm reading this? Or is it 2019? Or it's
2023?
FY 2019? Because if it's FY 2019, aren't we too late?
You're correct, it's FY '20.
Okay, good.
Apologies.
All right, okay.
And I think that's probably the most significant area for the board to consider from a policy point of view is the when. I think Mr. Hurd excluded, given his newness to the board. I think the majority of the board has, for quite a while, expressed an interest in exploring this as new debt service rolls on. So the question does become when, how do we time it when new debt service rolls on? In the upcoming years, there'll be more Gibbs debt service as well as Minuteman debt service rolling on. Those numbers, though, in context, will pale in comparison to the high school debt service rolling on, and you can see we're estimating that doesn't even begin in a small amount to roll on in '21, but not in large amount until '23. So I don't tonight have the answer for you, but I think that's a context for you to be thinking about is, do you want to start a little bit? Do you want to be more aggressive with it? Do you want to see us try to match it up more tightly with the high school? And we can model what the board desires to take a closer look at.
Okay. And then for the rate impact, the reason it's so variable, even in the 0%, it's so variable, 5%, 4.4, 8.3, is that, if you took out the DPW reconstruction, would it be totally flat year to year? Or is that entirely driven by DPW, or what drives that variability?
It would be closer to flat in terms of a more similar increase year over year.
It would be like about 5% every year if it weren't for the but the DPW rebuild puts a big
Puts it,
chunk
spikes it
on
up
it.
a little bit, yeah.
Diane?
Just to follow up on the last statement that you said in terms of, you could also do the calculation, including with the school. And I understand the committee takes a vote, is it Wednesday night?
The high school building committee meets tomorrow night,
Two.
could possibly take a vote, but has a meeting scheduled for Thursday in case a vote is not, in case we can't reach agreement tomorrow night.
And so, if the chairman thinks that's okay, if after, whether it's Tuesday night or Thursday night, if you could, like to take advantage of that opportunity and just, maybe include it in our Novus agenda, what that
What was
calculation
absolutely, yeah.
would look like, just for consideration on that.
Oh, based on the cost estimates from the option, yes, okay,
Yes.
got it, yeah.
And am I correct that it's, you know what, I won't say it. I have a sort of a prevailing sense of the way I think the committee will go, but I'm not going to say what I think it is till they say what it is. Okay, thank you.
This is, so I'll say thank you very much for putting, Kevin.
Yeah, so just to, you chose 10 and 25. I'm wondering between 15 and 20, is there a reason you went just to?
For presentation purposes tonight, just for simplicity, Sandy ran 5 different scenarios, 10% a year, 20% a year, 33% a year, and rather than sort of just drown you in scenarios, but any scenario you want to see, Sandy can run fairly easily.
And is it 2 separate votes we need to take? One is on the shift percentage, and one is then on the
Yeah,
rates?
so one vote would be in general for the FY19 rates, and Mike and I would like for the board to consider that before September 1st, so at the July or August meeting. For the debt shift, you really don't have to take the debt shift vote until the tax rate is being set, or just prior to the tax rate being set in December. So there is more time to process if the board wishes for more time to process. And that's a funny one, where you won't actually vote a reduction schedule, you'll just vote what you want to shift. So if it's a 10% reduction, we'll take $550,000 off the $5.5 million debt shift and then set that number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So on the debt shift, one of the things I've been thinking about is that one of the ways we might refer this to the long-range planning and ask them to make which of course I sit on, so I'm saying, Joe and I are the board's representatives there, but that also has the school committee, the finance committee, the treasurer, the comptroller, so on, and because, to me, this is, the decision about the debt shift really plays into our debates about the override and the size of the override and the marketing thereof, and so I'm inclined to suggest that we refer it to there unless someone has a different suggestion.
So moved.
Second?
That makes sense to you, Adam?
Very good.
Doesn't
idea.
have to be
Yeah.
part of the motion, but
Yeah.
whatever
All right.
Adam can get us after
Yes.
tomorrow or Thursday night.
Any further discussion on debt shift for now? Actually, can we take a vote on that? Actually, what did we say? We said discussion? I think I'm going to say discussion and
I think you can
referral
vote
are
to
good,
refer, yeah.
we're good enough for there, on that one. I'm going to take a motion on referring the debt shift question to the long-range planning for their advice. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 4-0, okay. So now, water rates, are there any further questions or comments on that? I think we should probably give Adam and Mike some direction about which direction we're leaning, and then put it on a future agenda. Is that any? any direction if someone's leaning right now or not?
Well, just based on what we have in the recommendation, it's water sewer rates, the 4.5%.
Yep.
So if that's appropriate, or do we need that as a motion?
I don't think so. I think just telling, yeah, I think verbal
Yeah,
advice is
in
good.
between now and July, letting me know what further information you would want at a hearing in July, or whatever ends up working out schedule-wise, it would be fine as well.
So is that all right, just
Yeah.
stating the 4.5% for the water sewer? Is it water sewer or just sewer?
So water's 5, sewer's
Water's
4.5.
4.5, okay, that's all. Sorry,
So
that's right, water 5.
Mike and Adam, thank you very much for bringing it up, because as Adam knows, I was pushing to have this sooner than later on our agenda, because I knew that it was going to be, this is going to be, a lot of people are going to be really happy with this, and some people are going to find it really controversial, and I wanted to start that conversation going so that we could really talk about it. And I was actually also thinking about, Kevin, Diane, you might remember, before I was on the board, you guys the board started rolling back the shift at one point, and then it stopped. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, but I don't remember why we stopped it.
I think it was as part of the 2004, 2005 override campaign, because it leveled tax impact. I think the prior policy had been to mirror the actual debt service that the MWRA charges Arlington, which I think is $7 or $8 million, Mike. Does that sound about right? It's more than the $5.5 million. So I think it had been tracking that number, and that number was going up. So I assume the discussions in the room at that time were saying, we're asking for an override. How do we cap that tax impact? And that's how you accomplished it.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Yes.
Can I ask an unrelated question, Mr. Chairman, because I'm embarrassed to say I was unable to answer it. At my book club the other morning, I was asked why a water bill had a $10 administration fee on it.
So
I
that,
think it was called an administration fee. Does that something, was that?
yeah. Some communities call it a base meter fee. We call it an administrative fee. That's basically the charge for managing your meter, the software, bill processing, even if you don't use water.
That's what I guess, so.
Yeah.
They'll throw me out of the book club, you know. Thank you.
All right, actually, someone maybe move her seat then.
Move the seat.
Second.
Motion by Kevin, second by John. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, next up on the consent agenda. The consent agenda are items that we believe are non-controversial that we can move through with a single vote. We have a request for a contractor drain layer license, G-Blaze Construction of Bellingham, Mass. We have a request for a special one-day all-alcohol license for a private event at the Whittemore Robbins House.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Mahan, second by Mr. Hurd. No one's here for any of those. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Appointments, Commission for Arts and Culture. We have two appointments, Annalise Ruggles and Tom Davison. Are Annalise and Tom here, please? Come on up. Step up to the mic. And is Annalise here as well? Not seeing her. All right. You want to just pull the mic down a little bit, introduce yourself, say why you're interested in the committee, and thank you.
Sure. Tom Davison, currently on the Arlington Tourism Economic Development Committee, and I've been involved in the arts for a long time. I think there's a lot of opportunities with the ACAC to activate the arts and culture in town with the new, there's three things in particular I think that are good opportunities. The new designation of the cultural district allows us to develop new partnerships and consider new partnerships to promote and to program the town differently. I think secondly, we can look at different activations in town from like the Arlington Heights, which I know there's a discussion going on how we can maybe rebrand that and look at parks, the use of other open spaces. And last, how we can best use the arts as a tool for branding and economic development. So that's it.
Cool. Mr. Greeley.
Yeah, move approval. Thank you for the service you provided so far, and
Thank you.
are willing to continue. Great background for
Thank
this.
you.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
Sure.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hurd. Any further questions?
No, just again, our thanks. You're on a couple of committees, commissions, and
Thank
I
you.
do appreciate your being able to allocate family time, business time, and I know
Thank you,
you
appreciate
have
that.
a lot of contributions on this as well. Good to see you, Tom.
You too.
All right, so I think, Marie, let's bring Annalise back again, unless for future. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. All right, we've got a motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. Congratulations, thank you very much. Next up, for the LBGTQIA Rainbow Commission with Julia Forsyth. Julia, welcome. We've got your resume. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what you think you can bring to the commission, we'd
Okay.
appreciate it.
My name is Julia Forsyth. I'm a fairly recent resident here of Arlington. I moved here in August,
Welcome.
and it's been a very welcoming and nice community so far. I really enjoyed it. I'm a scientist by training. I'm a chemist. I have a PhD in chemistry. I've served in a lot of academic committees and industrial committees and everything else, so I'm hopefully bringing some of that experience in there. I guess kind of my interest in the committee is in October. I came out. I'm a transgender woman, and it's been an interesting journey so far. And you know, just the welcome that both my coworkers and my neighbors have given me was amazing, and just the support and everything else. And I would guess I would just like to be able to offer that to others in the community through events, meetings, everything else, being available to speak to other people, and just try to work on just inclusiveness and promoting the diversity of the community.
Thank you very much. Questions or a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Mrs. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Greeley.
No, I'd just like to say to Ms. Forsyth, I'm so happy you have come to Arlington, and it seems as though we've welcomed you as we welcome everybody else, and I know you have the scientist background, but you certainly have personal life experience and anecdotes and can give a particular insight that I'm not going to say is unique to you because, you know, there are other individuals, but it's definitely you versus me. You bring a lot more to the table, so I really do appreciate you being brand new here to Arlington, giving back in such a great capacity so soon, and I look forward to see what you're going to do on the committee. It's going to be exciting.
I'm the selectman and liaison to that committee, and it's, as you know, it's a new committee, and I think the meetings have been great, and they're really interesting, and I think you're going to enjoy them too, so thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much for choosing Arlington and your willingness to help others. Good for you. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your willingness to serve.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much. Have a good night. All right, next up, for approval, Home Taste, 1312 Massachusetts Avenue, Kai Chen, common victualler license. Welcome. Why
Good
don't you
evening.
Pull down that mic, introduce yourself, and is that your husband that I read about?
No, actually, this is my client, Kai Chen. He's
I
the
apolog-
director in the.
I apologize. I read an interview with a wife and husband, and I apologize for making that assumption.
Actually, his wife is right here as well.
I did read about you.
There you go.
My name is Mei Hui Hu. I'm the attorney for the corporation applicant, YNK Noodles, Inc. Mr. Chen is the president and officer and the director of the corporation. This is their second location. They opened their first one 3 years ago in Watertown, and it's been seeing tremendous amount of success, and now they've decided to come here and open up a second location. The menu features noodles dishes, noodles from the north, south of China, and it's healthy food, non-greasy and low salt. So we hope that with today's lifestyle, this would be welcomed by the community. We are proposing no change of occupancy, 17 seats already in that prior restaurant, and the hours of operation are 7 days a week, 10 to 10. And we're open for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions?
Move approval, and I have to say, I've never seen or had a Chinese burger that says stewed beef or stewed pork. I've never, and shows you my culinary taste, so.
Oh, you have to come over
I
to
know,
try it.
and I'm trying to figure out how you stew a burger, and I'm gonna have to come in and see what it tastes like in the end, but you certainly do have a great menu here, and as your learned counsel attorney cited, this will be your second store, so gladly move approval and welcome you to Arlington. Wish you great success.
Thank you.
Is there a second from
Second.
Mr. Greeley?
Did you bring samples? 30 years I've been asking people for samples. It could be for the all-alcohol license. No, thank you for
He
choosing.
doesn't have any samples today, but he welcomed everyone on grand opening day to try his hand-pulled noodles.
Oh, nice.
Does he know when the opening day is subject to all this approximately, or the month?
The plan is for July 15th. We have spoken to the building department, health department, and fire marshal. They are just waiting for our hearing today, and just need to, they don't see any issues on our application, and so just our final approval today, and then we'll be able to move forward. So hopefully, mid-July.
All right, we'll look for you in July, hopefully.
Thank you for choosing Arlington for your business.
Yeah.
谢谢你到Arlington来。
Are you planning on adding alcohol in the future, or you're going to decide later, or you've decided yes or no?
他就有牌吗？ Currently, he has no plan to apply for alcohol license.
Okay. Any further questions? All those,
Mrs., we did okay? Okay, sorry.
all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 4-0 vote. Thank you very much. Welcome. Next up, for approval, Town Tavern, 193 Mass Ave, George Mullen. We have a common victualler license, an all alcohol license, and a sidewalk cafe. Mr. Leone, if you could introduce yourself and your client.
John Leone.
Welcome.
Is working? I am here this evening with George Mullen Bootsy, this goes by, with WSCTT Corp. Town Tavern. He's planning on taking over the current restaurant Olivio's. We're under contract to do that. We have an assignment of the lease pending approval of this board and the ABCC. He's going for a common victualler license, an all alcohol license, and a sidewalk permit cafe. I think you have all of those. I just noticed I did have one typo in my application for the common vic. It says Saturday 10 to 10 midnight, so it should be 12 midnight on the Saturday. I'll remind Ms. Kapelka of that tomorrow. Otherwise, he's going to keep the same floor plan set up, 120 seats. He has a restaurant menu of a typical pub fare, I would say. I think. Okay, better than typical. He has a lot of experience in the restaurant business. He's been opening restaurants for many years. He's opened 7 or 8 for other folks and decided this is his chance to do it himself. If you have any questions of him, I'm sure he would be glad to answer them.
Thank you.
I have one question. Does Olivio's currently have sidewalk?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They're permitted, but he didn't open it this year because he's just looking to get out.
Mrs. Mahoney and Mr. Greeley.
I have a question, perhaps for Attorney Leone and/or Town Council, because I think the Commission on Disability, along with the other town departments, submitted their recommendation for approval, but they also had some language in there, and I'm wondering if we're not doing it. I might be a little surprised, or maybe we're doing some of it, but they were saying that they're asking the board to recommend a compliance monitoring process be developed in addition to employee training for all restaurant employees, basically so that what we find is all the employees get trained in the beginning, sort of as an onslaught, but then there's no process set in place to ensure that with the turnover of staff and when the weather gets better, that there's some sort of monitoring, whether from the restaurant owner or whether from the town of Arlington, to ensure that the accessibility is maintained further on down in the process. I don't know if you had received that, or...
Well, I saw the recommendations of the different departments. You mean as far as the sidewalk cafe goes, or
Yes.
the entire? I'm sure that he'll do whatever the board and the ADA department wants him to do, but he will obviously have to keep that 48-inch barrier, which the department, the ADA compliance officer recommended 4 feet.
No, I only raise it because
yeah,
you
I'm not
haven't
sure how you-
opened business yet, because,
Yeah.
and so this gentleman hasn't done it, but I have seen it with the outdoor cafes.
Yeah, they
that
tend to
when
migrate
it
into the
starts, Yeah,
walkway.
and then it just seems to, more and more tables go out there, so sort of looking for, the Disability Commission was saying either the board recommends that we put in some sort of monitoring process to do that, and/or we raise it with this applicant as well as anyone who comes back in to reapply, that, because we have seen this migration, that when it first goes in, and then when, someone calls and the Board of Health goes down, invariably it's, oh, well, the person who did the training on that and would oversee it no longer works here,
That's
Do
gonna
you
be
understand
him.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I have years of systems in place and opening in several towns. I abide by whatever guidelines.
Could
are
you,
given.
actually, sorry, you gotta, yeah, exactly, move the mic or move the humans.
Sorry.
You got millions of people at home who need to hear what you're saying. Thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm Bootsy Mullen, by the way.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So again, I have systems that I've been using for years. I've opened 7 beer works in several towns, and we abide by whatever. I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure what you're saying, but if it's given to me, it'll be executed.
What happens is, first, everything goes out great, it's got the 36 inches and the other requirements, and then you start to see more and more chairs come out, which kind of buttresses in, and then when we go down there, there's more tables and more chairs that doesn't allow for the 36, 24-inch. You know what I mean?
No, I
When I say
understand.
migrate, it just grows because it's so popular, and basically,
hope.
it's training the staff that, when you have one table and it's I don't know if you call it a 4-top outside, and you have 6 or 7 people, and, maybe you could squeeze in one more chair in there,
Yeah.
but you can't do the whole 6-7 party because everybody's starting to come out. And that's what's happening because it's very successful, and people want to avail themselves of the opportunity. And just letting you know, because you haven't opened yet, so this may never, ever happen to you, but that's what I mean by the migration.
But I guess going back to training practices, I do have systems in place that I'm taking from my past experience. Nobody just walks on the floor or walks on a patio without any training, I mean, it's hard enough to get somebody to come in to train. I mean, that's our biggest problem, getting people in the first place. But when they come in, we do have training procedures.
Oh, no, my family are the Chateaus, so I'm definitely well-versed.
My kids love the Chateau.
All right. No plug. I get no personal.
Kevin,
Yes, so I would like to move approval for a common victualer's license, all alcohol license, Sidewalk Cafe permit for the Town Tavern at 193 Mass Avenue, subject to all conditions as set forth. And I do so sadly because Olivio's is one of my favorite restaurants. But a tavern, first of all, in the name, interests me. And then an IPA rendered black pastrami with Russian, I'm there. When does this take place? When would you hope to open?
Oh, mid-August, we hope. Mid-August.
Thank you for choosing Arlington. Thank you,
for
John.
having me.
Great job as always. Thanks.
all right, I've got a motion, do we have a second? Second from Mr. Hurd. So my question is actually similar to Mrs. Mahan's, and maybe it's a lecture, not a question. But is that just that when we get alcohol violations, it is most often because of a new employee who didn't get trained right. And so you already said that you've got the systems and you've done it at other stores. I just want to say I look forward to not seeing you again, so to speak.
Can I mention one more thing?
Please, yeah.
So I'm tip certified. My GM I just hired is tip certified, but we're also during training. I'm going to have somebody come in and do a class just for my staff. And then, going back to your point, try to stay on top of it as they come and go. People leave, but we probably get to the point where we'll make a tip certification a requirement to work there.
Okay.
So, but I'm going to also start on training with a class.
Cool. And when I say I didn't want to see, I really did mean that in jest about because generally, I mean, when people come before us, it's generally good reasons. They're they're adding hours, or they want like a New Year's Eve night or something like that. You're very welcome to come back. I just mean I don't want you to come back because of an alcohol violation.
And I'm bringing a sandwich.
Clouds over.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Any further questions?
No, and just to the chair's point, just so you know, and Attorney Leone can certainly attest to this, when we've had these alcohol violations, somewhat of a majority of times, because I know you say, staff being trained, it's someone who was busing or someone who was hosting, somebody called in sick. by virtue of their original job description, they don't have that training, and it's somebody being kind of put in last minute. And I'm not saying you don't do that. That's where you have an assistant manager or GM that really watches, that person. That's where we've seen the mistakes, when they said, oh, well, the manager wasn't in, and the bartender was acting as the, assistant manager, and, Mahan was bussing, and we had to put her on tables, and that's where everything fell apart, because that employee never was trained that way. So just,
Yeah. Well, God forbid I'm on the floor instead of being in the kitchen.
God forbid. No, I'm only kidding.
All right.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, I've got a motion from Mr. Greeley, seconded by Mr. Hurd. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to
Thank you.
Arlington.
Thank you.
All right, next up on the item is the Citizens Open Forum. And except in unusual circumstances, any matter presented for consideration of the board shall neither be acted upon nor a decision made the night of the presentation in accordance to this policy of the open forum. It should be noted that there's a 3-minute time limit to present a concern or request. And just want to point out that if you're here for either James Street or the Beer Garden or the Selectmen Awards Committee, you'll have an opportunity to talk under those agenda items later on. So having said that, is anyone here for the Citizens Open Forum? All right. Okay. Ms. Butler.
I'm going
You
to
want-
have to push this down.
Absolutely. Do you want to do it from the chair? Do you want to talk from the chair?
No, no,
Okay.
no. I don't talk from chairs in courts. I'm okay.
All right.
Now, I won't dance a jig, but I can stand and deliver.
All right.
And my concern for the Citizens Open Forum is the dangerous and uneven condition of the brick walkways. And I literally have to watch every place I put my cane. They are not maintained. There are gaps, holes, uneven filling done with asphalt, which is 1 to 3 inches below the bricks. They're actively dangerous for people using walkers, people using canes, blind people who are cane taught, and there are many places in town. I've posted a few pictures of them over time, and they make our town look like a deteriorating third world state. They're unsafe, unappetizing, and not something where I could bring other friends who have some mobility challenges.
Thank you.
So whether there should be a way for people to report these things, or there's some explanation for why they're not maintained, but they're actively dangerous as well as, if you'll excuse me, ugly.
Thank you.
Do you care for a response?
Mr. Chaplin, just could you share some thoughts on them?
So I will say I fully acknowledge and generally agree with Ms. Butler's observations about the brick walks predominantly in Arlington Center. So where we're at is 2 summers ago, we went through a conceptual planning process to look at Mass Ave Phase 2. So from Pond Lane, where the East Arlington project ended, up through Mill Street, or perhaps even as far as Bartlett Ave for a redesign. So we went through this conceptual process, came up with a plan for the entirety of Mass Ave, a big part of which would be replacing the sidewalks, likely with a brick trim, but a concrete walking path that would have far less of the maintenance concerns of a brick walk. We applied for a state grant to fund that, a MassWorks grant, and we did not receive that grant because that grant prioritizes association with either significant increase in housing development or economic development, workplace jobs type development in the center, which there was nothing proposed at that time, and there is not today. So me, Mr. Rademacher, and Jenny Raitt of Planning are actively working on a plan whereby we replace sidewalks with existing capital monies before we do a larger redesign. There are trade-offs, there are sacrifices. We may not be able to make some of the changes we ultimately would want to make in a Phase 2 if we pull that trigger, but I think there is a long overdue need for us to address the sidewalks in the center, as Ms. Butler describe. So I don't have a timeline or plan that I can delineate for you tonight, but I can assure you it's something that we're actively working on.
I've had at least one bad fall, and right out here in front of our town hall,
Yeah, Ms.
it's awful.
Okay.
Actually, Ms. Butler, so, thank you, all right. Is there any member of the board who wanted to go right now? Okay, so, thank you for your thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
No, I can just say that this is an issue that has been important to me because my office, my
Right there.
business office is right at 400 Mass Ave, and which I think is probably the worst stretch. I'm sure there are worse. But there's an elderly building right next to me. Every day I see people struggling. I struggle on it. I carry my kids. It's dangerous. You know, they fall. So I've talked to Adam about this. It's definitely on our radar and something that I will continue to advocate for just because I see it every day. And it's hard to shovel too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, now being handicapped myself, I certainly also struggle with smooth walkways, the rug here, never mind bricks or whatever. But at one time, bricks were considered to be quite attractive, and it's the reason there's so many of them through the town. But styles and, and tastes change, but I agree, so we need to fix it.
All right, I'm going to, thank you, Ms. Butler. Is there anybody else who's here under open forum? Come on up. And you're not for James or the beer garden, right?
I'm sorry?
You're not here for James or the beer garden, right?
I'm for the, just my concern about the beer garden.
So we're going to do an agenda item a little bit later on that is the beer garden, and we'll invite you up then.
Okay.
Does that sound good? Anybody else for the open forum? Okay. The open forum is closed. Next up, James Street repaving, John Griffin and residents. Welcome. If you could introduce yourself and move the mic up so that we can,
Yeah, no question. Can I hand out just a?
sure,
Pieces of paper here?
especially if you have one for Marie, because it's a,
Yeah, I think I have 8, so. that
all
should
right, as part of the open meeting, everything we consider.
be some kind of rule to comply with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this what we have in our packet?
I'm just going to read a brief statement.
Sure, just introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, my name is John Griffin. I live at 38 James Street.
And actually, come on up to the mic, sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so first, members of the Board of Selectmen, thank you for your time this evening, and thank you for everything you do on behalf of the town. I'm sure it's an endless amount of work. My name is John Griffin. I was going to get to that. I live at 38 James Street. I'm here this evening regarding the petition submitted by the residents of 25 to 47 James Street to the Board of Selectmen to fill the potholes and provide temporary patching to the section of James Street abutting our properties. The petition was submitted pursuant to Title III, Article 3, Section 2 of the Arlington Town Bylaws. The bylaws lay out 4 specific factors in considering the requested repairs. I'm going to run through these factors. It's not going to take too long, I promise. The first factor is the accessibility of the properties on the private ways to emergency vehicles such as police, fire, and rescue. The potholes measure over 6 inches in depth and are more than 3 feet wide. They will impede emergency vehicles from traveling on James Street. Second factor, the volume of traffic that utilizes the private way. James Street indirectly connects Route 2A in Arlington to the Winchester Town Line and is regularly used by the public. The Winchester portion of the James Street is regularly maintained and free of potholes. Third factor, the percentage of the abutters on the private way petitioning the board for the repairs. 100% of the abutters from 25 to 47 James Street have petitioned the board to fill the potholes and provide temporary patching. Fourth and final factor, I promise, the number of years that the way shall have been open to the public use. We have a resident who's lived on the street for almost 60 years She says it's been open to the public for at least that long, though probably a lot longer. Based on these factors, it seems to be a pretty easy decision for the members of the board, but I want to continue just a little further and consider who is obligated to make these repairs.
Excuse me.
If the town is not obligated, am I? I don't recall ever assuming or accepting this liability. I know as a property owner, I owe some duty of care to people I invite onto my property. I also know if I install a swimming pool, I am obligated to protect the public from dangers it may impose. But I've never heard of a duty to make the street abutting my home safe for public use. So I did a little research. The issue is addressed in Mass General Law, Chapter 84, Section 23. The obligation of a city or town to keep its ways in repair and reasonably safe does not extend to a way opened and dedicated to public use, which has not become a public way, which you guys like, right? Why am I here? Why did I even say that? However, it goes on. If a road opened and dedicated to public use, which has not become a public way, falls into disrepair, the city or town must either shut down the way or by other sufficient means warn the public against entering upon such non-public way. Failure to either close the way or post such notice will impose a liability on the city or town for the defects therein. Further, almost done, I swear. Further, before closing or discontinuing public access to a road connecting to an adjoining municipality, that is to say Winchester in our case, because our road continues up to Winchester, the town initiating such change must give written notice of such action to the chief executive officer of the abutting town. They must hold a public hearing with public notice, and the chief executive officer of the abutting town must concur in writing. So the choice is pretty clear. Either send someone out to fill the potholes or shut down the road and notify the public that it is not safe for public use, which of course you can't do until you notify the town of Winchester, hold a hearing, and receive approval from the town of Winchester. Now, if I have missed anything, please let me know, especially if I have missed anything regarding my obligations. I see nowhere that the law requires me as a homeowner to keep the road outside my house safe for public use. And from a common sense perspective and a public policy perspective, it shouldn't. Why should the town of Arlington deputize hundreds or thousands of homeowners to maintain the roads outside their homes for public use? I have enough trouble maintaining my lawnmower. With that, I will thank you again for your time this evening, and for the reasons stated above, we request that you direct the town manager to make the requested temporary repairs to James Street. Thank you. 4.5 minutes, I swear I timed it.
Thank you. Any questions from the board right off? Adam or Doug, has either of you had an opportunity to take a look at this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the first time I've seen this, so I'm not fully briefed on all of the legal issues that the gentleman is citing. Generally speaking, I have a few comments. One is that with respect to the choice before the town to close private ways or repair them, that may or may not be something that the town has previously decided to have to do some legislative research. I think at our last meeting, Ms. Mahan mentioned a moratorium on acceptance of private ways. And again, it does not jibe with what we have in our town bylaws. So I certainly welcome the gentleman's.
There's a third option too, notify the public.
Sorry, we're going to let one person at a time, and then we're going to let him go.
I apologize.
Thanks, Doug.
But the scope of what we're talking about here is something that I'd have to take a hard look at. I don't want to either be totally dismissive out of hand, because this is the way that we've always done things, and I haven't seen this argument raised before. But I also don't want to also just say, well, it's probably true because it's been, presented here on a couple pages. So I'd have to take a hard look at it and get back to the board and the residents with respect to this specific provision with respect to these options as they're presented.
Kevin.
So, but it was my understanding, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Town Council, that the residents of the private ways are responsible for maintenance of the road.
That's generally always been, sorry, Mr. Chairman, that's generally always been my understanding of the laws of public and private ways. Now, there are two different types of private ways. There are true private ways and statutory private ways. Statutory private ways were approved by a board of survey, but not accepted by the town. True private ways, on the other hand, are essentially, and the analogy is not perfect, but they're glorified driveways. You know, places that the public doesn't really have the right to access. So it has always been my understanding in the law and in the materials that I've read and reviewed for this board and our town bylaws that private ways are maintained by the residents who live on them. Otherwise, it'd be difficult for me to understand what the distinction would be between a public and a private way for the purposes of a Board of Surveys decision with respect to accepting it. I'd just also note that an important dimension that we talked about last time is that public and private ways are very, very different. You've noticed them for the most part. Public ways are built and maintained to a certain standard. Not just present standard, but historically. And so a lot of private ways were developed a certain way because otherwise it would have been difficult to install a public way and all of the housing that was usually accompanied those. So I will obviously take a hard look at this, examine the arguments that are presented and the case citations and things of that nature. But yes, that has always been my understanding, and that's always been, to my understanding, the position of the town.
Kevin?
So I'm going to move that we table this to give town council time to look at it and say to you, sir, that if presentation were enough, you did a superb job.
Thank you very much.
You built a wonderful case, but I want you to think about something.
Sure.
We say yes to this.
Yeah.
40% of the town's roads are private ways.
Yeah.
Every one of them can come in here and ask the same thing. We would, first of all, while this is tabled, I'm going to ask through our town manager that police and fire take a look at the road. They're the ones that would determine whether or not it's passable.
Sure.
Right?
Correct.
Is that a fair statement?
Correct. And in fact, may I, Mr. Chair, the Public Works Director did take a look at it prior to the meeting, and his exact recommendation was, though he would deem it passable by emergency vehicles, those experts themselves should be the ones who make that determination, so we will ask them to do that.
But your neighbors should be proud of you, sir. But
Actually, sorry. We're going to go through everyone on the board, then I'll give you another chance. Kevin, are you done?
yeah, I'm all set. Thank you.
Diane? And actually, sorry, we've got a motion. Is there a
Yeah,
second?
motion to table.
Second.
Okay, Diane.
I speak only because, and say I could be incorrect, just because I don't have Mass General Law, Section 84, and all the subsections memorized, and we just have the 2 pages here.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out that what you cited was correct, with the exception of this law looks at cities and towns for their public ways, and that's what Section 2321 talks about, the responsibility of a city or town and municipality for their public ways in terms of how they're to maintain them and when they have to go out and do extra maintenance. It doesn't include private ways, and that's the way it's been, and I've said, you know, I'm going to research it with town council. I thought it was 1979 when the town manager recommended Mr. Marquis, and town meeting voted that was the last public taking of a private way. You also did include in there that it's Section 2320, and I don't have the preceding paragraphs before that, that it does talk about municipal law practice, recognize that there are public ways and private ways. And that particular section talks about how a city or town or municipality have been given the authorization to establish a betterment program, so that when private ways come in, that's the way we can offer some relief to you. In terms of, nope, not a debate.
I agree, thank you.
I'm not even at 2 minutes. But I would leave it to, you know, town council in terms of interpretation of that, plus the corresponding what goes along there. I always say to residents, and I have many residents who live on private ways as well as board members, what you consider impassable basically are large potholes, and you have to slow down. You can still pass through there. The way, and I'm a court reporter, that I've sat in on law reviews, this is talking about usually in a case where, like, you can't say you'd never repair a private way. That would be a case where literally, for some reason, a gaping hole opened up and you couldn't enter either way in, and that would have to be addressed by the town, because, as you say, emergency vehicles cannot get through. That's not the case here. You just can't go down as fast, you just have to slow down. And a lot of people who live on private ways, they choose not to, and we have people complain to us, you know, yeah, I go down that street and my shocks, and the residents have chosen on that private way, we don't want to repair it, because A, it slows traffic down, B, nobody comes down here unless they really want to, they live here or visiting someone, so. Again, I'll leave it to town council, but everything that you cited in terms of when the town, in my personal opinion, needs to come in and make a repair, it's on its own public way. And a private way, it's not, and it's not for debate. Thank you.
Mr. Hearn.
Just one comment, when you talked about your liability and your duty to repair. Duty is a sort of legal term of art, and I'll let town council correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have a duty to repair. It falls on you to accept the expense of a repair if there's a hole that you want to be repaired. But when you talk about liability, like your pool and at your house, if there's a pothole and somebody drives down the road and bangs up their tire, it's not, the duty's not on you.
Thank you.
It doesn't, correct,
That's
Mr. Heim?
key.
So if someone bangs up their tire on a pothole in a private way, they can't go to the,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think what gets difficult in these discussions is that sometimes we're engaged in a legal discussion and sometimes we're engaged in trying to communicate to a lay public. So what I would say is that if there's a defect like a pothole on a private way and there's an accident and someone gets hurt, the town is not going to be held liable for that in court. The abutters on that private way are going to be held liable for that.
I disagree. I'm going to speak up there.
Well, you can disagree, but that's been my, that's my legal opinion, that's been my experience.
Could you please, Mr. Griffin, I'm going to give you a chance, but with the way the meetings work is that you get to talk about what you want to talk about, then we go through the people up here who want to talk about, then we bring it back for further questions if appropriate. And so I'd really ask you to hold your horses and let's finish our conversation up here. Thank you.
Whether or not there's some other separate duty that has some sort of larger connotation than insulating yourself from potential liability is, I guess, a separate question. I don't know that I would say that there's absolutely no duty whatsoever. The town of Arlington is not responsible for expending tax resources to maintain private ways. That's also black letter law. But the town, by its own votes of town meeting, elected to do things like provide snow removal service. So if a road isn't passable, the town's not going to provide snow removal service, for example. So when you talk about duty, it can be it depends a little bit on the context in which we're speaking about it in.
Well,
but I understand what you're saying, which is as a term of art, sir, yes, there's a distinction between liability and duty.
so it'd be your understanding that if there was a pothole and I drove my car through and ruined my rim, that you could sue the owners of the private way?
Well, you certainly can't, sorry, Mr. Chairman, you certainly can't sue the town of Arlington for the
Yep.
condition in a private way that damages your car.
Okay.
Now, I think it's not really for the town to determine exactly how you're supposed to proceed from there, but generally in my experience, it doesn't happen a lot, but what has happened is that folks have filed suit against all of the abutting property owners. Those suits have not been dismissed by a court, to my understanding. The last time I was in a case like this, there were about, 14 different attorneys representing each individual homeowner's insurance policy. So, to my knowledge, those types of cases have gone to summary judgment and trial, and they haven't been dismissed as a legal matter, a strictly legal matter, because there can't be a liability against abutters on private ways.
Well, that's new to me, so. But I grew up on a private way. We do have a lot of private ways. This has been in front of us recently. My father still lives on a private way. They as a community group or, neighborhood, just got together. They had to repave all their potholes. So potholes are common. They happen everywhere. So you're not in your own boat. And, I think, like Kevin said, if we all of a sudden start just, repaving every pothole that's before us. We're going to have tight agendas with a lot of private way owners coming before us to get their potholes filled.
So just want to review where we are. We've got a motion to table because you've brought up something new, something we haven't heard before in terms of how we should react to a private way. I think you also probably heard what our usual reaction to requests about private way is, just to remind people about our obligations under, according to town meeting. So I'm inclined to go forward on that vote to table. Do you have anything that you think that you want us to hear about before we?
I just want to thank you guys very much. I really appreciate your time. And I do think that the real crux came down between, thank you very much, Selectman Hurd and Councilor. I think I didn't see anything that said that the abutters were responsible. I looked far and wide, and I'd actually be very interested in the case that you're mentioning.
Of course.
My understanding, I thought I laid it out, and I think that's pretty clear, is that the town, the town has an obligation to maintain a public road, open and shut. As far as the private road, no obligation to maintain it. I agree. However, if they do have the obligation to either shut it down or post a notice that it's dangerous. But that's all I will have to say.
All right.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Okay. So we've
Well,
got,
can I, sir?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So you'd be happy if we post a sign that says this road is dangerous?
Uh,
That's really all you want?
Or closed, he wants to say closed.
So, at the very least, it would resolve all this ambiguity out there amongst my neighbors, because my neighbors are terrified because I think they have heard that we're liable for it, and I don't think we're liable for it. If the town acknowledges the duty to either close the road or post that it's unsafe, then maybe people may be more willing to get their checkbooks out and fix it. But I want to clarify that the abutters are not responsible for it. I'm pretty certain of that, and that's kind of one thing I would like to clarify.
Well, we're pretty certain you are, but.
Okay, no, please, I want to see the case that he's mentioning, and I'm more inclined to agree with that, Selectman Hurd.
But not me.
Actually, no, your final point I do not agree with, but thank you very much.
I rely on town council, so.
Yeah.
If anybody brought free samples, that would help.
all right, so we've got a motion to table from Mr. Greeley, seconded by Mrs. Mahan. All those in favor of tabling, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it is tabled. Good luck, Mr. Heim.
Thank you.
Next up, for approval, Beer Garden, Jefferson Cutter House Lawn. Mr. Chapdelaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if it pleases the board, I'll run through an update since the board last met and discussed this proposal for a beer garden on the lawn in front of the Jefferson Cutter House, tell you some of the changes that have been made to the proposal since the board last met that were included in the memorandum to the board, also tell the board about some additional changes that have happened since the agenda was filed last Friday, and then seems there's a lot of folks here who want to talk about it tonight, so I'll try to be brief so that we can hear from all of them and from the board as well, of course. So in summary, there's a proposal that's been put forward for a local brewery in Somerville, Aeronaut Brewery, to run a weekend beer garden in Whittemore Park with really the driving goal of adding foot traffic and vibrancy to Arlington Center with the help of supporting local businesses by putting more feet on the street and people with money in their pockets to help Arlington Center businesses. So there was concerns raised both at the meeting by board members and then subsequent to the last week's board meeting about a number of things. So I'll try to run through these quickly. One, it was in regards to bicycle parking, where there would be bicycle parking made available. Aeronaut has agreed to rent portable bike parking to line Old Mystic Street along the bricks to give places for people riding bikes, a place for them to park their bicycles. There was concern raised about the adequacy of the toilets or the restrooms in the Jefferson Cutter House. So Aeronaut has agreed to rent one portable toilet and place it near the restroom in the Jefferson Cutter House, and also has designated on the map that's before the board 2 spots where additional portable toilets could be put in if after the first several weeks of operation it's deemed necessary based on lines and usage of the facilities. There was also a change made to only request to operate on Saturdays in July, and then to operate on the Saturday and Sundays in August, as well in September. They also changed their proposed hours, which had been 12 to 8 on Saturdays and 12 to 7 on Sundays, to a consistent 12 to 7 for all days that they're asking for approval for. There was also talk at the last meeting, concern about impact on local restaurants And I believe Aeronaut said they would be issuing an RFP to see if, as opposed to a food truck, they could have a local food vendor come in and provide food within the beer garden. They did issue that RFP, and I don't know any of the details yet. They might be able to talk about them tonight, but I believe they did receive at least 2 proposals from local restaurants to be able to provide food service within the proposed beer garden. I believe all of that I just mentioned was in the memo that the board received. Beyond that, I know I've received a number of emails and seen talk on local social media about the need for seating. That was not included in what was sent to the board, but in a conversation with Aeronaut today, they did agree to acquire seating, the exact details of which we haven't figured out yet. I had suggested some type of plastic Adirondack chair because those have large arms where things could be placed or cups could be placed. So we are going to address the seating concern, which I think was a very legitimate concern in terms of accessibility and people with disabilities not being able to stand for a long period of time. Also, I heard concern from board members as well as from people in the community about just how deep we were diving in without an ability to press stop or give reconsideration to what the board was being asked to approve. So again, in further dialogues with Aeronaut today, what I'm suggesting the board to do tonight, after hearing everybody out, answering any questions that need to be asked, considering approving the requested July and August dates, but only conditionally or provisionally approving the September dates, with a goal or an idea of coming in at the August 13th board meeting for a check-in for myself and Ally Carter to report in on feedback we've received, measure impact as best possible on local businesses, and then have the board take a chance at either final approval for September or asking for changes or whatever the board's prerogative would be at the August meeting. I believe those are all of the details that I wanted to lay out for the board. I'll mention more anecdotally or just sort of as context. I'm not sure, other than when we had the ill-fated signal change at Mass Mill and Jason, I've received so many emails from citizens about a matter. But I will say I don't often receive positive emails from citizens about much at all, to be frank. But I just assume most people think things are great and they only write if there's a problem. But I received really an overwhelming amount of support for this proposal. And I also received a lot of thoughtful concerns about the proposal. So we're working hard to try to address those concerns as best possible. I don't think we can address every concern that's raised, but we want this to be a success. We think it can be a good thing for Arlington, and we hope the board will give it consideration tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. I should have said this in the beginning, just how I planned to. So now that the town manager's done, we'll see if we get any other questions from the board for the manager or anybody else. Then I'm going to invite anybody who wants to come up to talk, and then we'll move back to the board and have a conversation after we do that. Sound good to everybody? Mm-hmm. All right, so having said that, questions for the manager?
Oh, we all had asked. So
yeah. All right.
Brought us up to speed.
Okay, so everyone who's is going to be welcome to talk. I'm going to say that there are a lot of people here, and I'm going to invite you to keep your remarks brief and on point. And repetition doesn't really help you that much. But at the same time, if you have something that you want to say, I agree with that, that's okay. But you don't need to say too much more than that. So we're going to, Ms. Preston jumped up first, so we'll put her up first at the mic. And then if anyone else wants to line up behind her, we'll keep going through you one by one.
Yeah, I'll start it with the chair.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Could you pull the mic down and introduce yourself?
Am I shorter than that? Yes. Joanne Preston, 42 Mystic Lake Drive, Webb Cowett Neighborhood Group, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 9. The Webb Cowett neighborhood is just down the hill from the Whittemore Park. I'm sorry, on the agenda, it doesn't even call it a park anymore. That was upsetting. It's a lawn. And Precinct 9 includes the Whittemore Park. I would like to say that favoring a beer garden is very separate from the concerns we have about using Whittemore Park. People in Arlington want a beer garden. It's fine with me. It's fine with a lot of people. But Whittemore Park is the issue. And I would like to introduce a concept rarely heard in government circles these days, for the common good. This group of permits for the beer garden gives over the use of Whittemore Park for 21 summer and early fall weekends for a total of $400, preventing the customary use of the park, which you see in this photo, well, I don't know what happened to it, photograph. Reading, writing, children playing on the railroad tracks, resting in the shade, quietly reading historic monuments, etc. In other words, it is no longer functionally a historic public park during the weekends in the warm weather when it is most used. No one can get a permit to use the park on a Saturday between now and probably the end of September. Arlington groups can't ask for it. We had a music group there 2 weeks ago, but they can't get a permit because it's all taken up. I would also like to say that the idea that it would be just provisional for September and you will discuss it makes no fundamental change. And because the crux of our issue is the being able for the public to use the park in the way that public parks are used. All right, the use of the park by what is estimated to be about 500 beer drinkers for this extensive amount of time will have a detrimental impact on the flower gardens, grass, historical markers, fences, and restrooms in the historic house. The cost of this impact will be passed on to taxpayers. The $400 they pay will not cover that. They have some insurance. Who's going to look every time they finish using it to see if the flower beds have been trampled on, if the grass is still there? Also, the use of the park. Unsupervised minors, which includes my 20-year-old daughter, who likes to go to the park on Saturday nights with her friends after getting ice cream cones, but they won't be able to do that anymore. I can tell you no 20-year-old I know likes to be supervised by their parents on Saturday night. Nor will residents be able to bring any food or any kind of drink. And remember, the permit starts at noon. They're setting up at 11. That's the whole day, essentially. It's the whole day for these little girls you see balancing themselves on the railroad track. And there's no mention of the removal of a large band music stage that covers a significant portion of the railroad tracks when the permit is not in effect. So are we going to be covering up the railroad tracks permanently all summer? How will we know if the beer garden is a success? Their criterion in their proposal is if beer drinkers say they will spend money in Arlington Center that day. Now, I'm a social scientist, a PhD in the field. I teach methods. You can't ask people that kind of question, get any valid answer. It's like asking you, are you going to start your diet today? Well, yeah, of course, right? But do you? Who knows? Probably not. But should not the question be, do Arlington residents, how they experience the garden, what suggestions for improvement, a better site, effect on Whittemore Park, another vendor who would actually pay money? I would like to sound a little ahead of myself, but I called around and looked on the internet.
Ms. Preston, I just want to point out, you've been going for 5 minutes.
I get one more minute?
You sure you can have another minute?
Okay.
But keep going, keep the pace up.
No neighboring towns allow the sale of alcohol by anyone for any kind of on their public parks. The ones in the Midwest, big cities, take a small part of their public park and they make a lot of money, which they put back into the coffers and fix up all their parks. I'd just like to say this has been 2 weeks. I remember bicycles, rentals took a long time. This is a big step to give over the use of a public park to a private company to sell alcohol, especially for such an extensive period of time, interfering with the usual use of the park. And it should take more than 2 meetings. I hope you will take more time and consider alternative sites. I'm also not convinced that they couldn't have it in the parking lot. I mean, the fact that I thought they were all coming on their bicycles, but now they're coming on cars too. There's no reason why that small part of the park, there are also trees and grass there. And so I hope you will. I hope you're the people we elect to think about the public good, and I hope you will. And to paraphrase a national historic figure, it is a small park, but there are those who love it and use it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up. If you could introduce yourself.
My name is Vincent Ferrari. I'm a resident of Arlington. My concerns are, first of all, the Carter House houses artifacts of Cyrus Dillon, and very famous sculptor. The purpose of it was to have a museum, or a museum within the Carter House, and it's to bring visitors and residents into the area. I don't think the purpose of it was to have a brewery put there and, for profit. I think it'll prevent a lot of residents and visitors from enjoying the quietness of this historical site. And I think it'll have a negative impact on other businesses that serve liquor outside. I don't think they're going to be in favor of it because you'll be taking business away from them. There are probably alternative spaces that can be used. For instance, between this building and the library, there's a big open space there. And I also think that area that's proposed right now for the beer garden, there might be a traffic problem because they're at the corner of a very busy intersection. Has there been any thought about that? And the other question is, who benefits from this? A private business coming into the area? I don't see the positive parts of it. The other thing is, I've been in the brewery business my entire life. I developed the Brewery Exchange up in Lowell, Massachusetts. I know the positives and negatives in the business, and I question a lot of things like, is there a certificate of occupancy for this? What are the restrictions on how many people can be in this beer garden? Can anybody answer that question?
250.
I'm sorry?
250.
250, okay. Will there be one bartender, 5 bartenders? Will there be waiters or waitresses? And are these people tip certified?
Yes.
They are?
Yep.
Okay, that's
So
very important.
did you have a chance to review the application that was a part of the meeting? So in preparation for the meeting, we published the document that has the proposal. Did you have a chance to read that?
No, I haven't.
Okay. And also, just so you know, in that, the Dallin Board of Directors wrote a letter in support of this. They're really excited about the foot traffic. So I apologize for interrupting, but there's a series of, there are a series of questions, and most of them, so is there any particular one that you want right now?
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern is you're restricting the ability of people to use the area for what it was meant for. I mean, you couldn't bring children to a crowd of people drinking. And I know that when you have 250 people drinking beer, things can get out of hand. Because when a guy or a woman has a little too many, they're not going to look at the clock and say it's time to go. They're going to, hang out and have a good time, and I don't blame them. I've been in the business and I've been in their shoes. So I guess my main concern is restricting people, residents and visitors from going there to enjoy the museum. We're taking a space away from them.
Okay.
And I don't think that's fair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Welcome. If you could introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Mark Rosenthal, 62 Walnut Street. I don't object in principle to the idea of a beer garden. I do have big problems with the current proposal. So, first of all, as has already been mentioned, the use of this as a beer garden will deprive the citizens of what this plot of land is expected to be used for. And I'd like to point out that in that part of town, it's pretty much the only green space. So, you know, another concern I have is that the speed with which this is being decided and the decision to charge a private profit-making company a negligible amount of money, I think creates, whether intended or not, creates an unsavory impression that somebody, you know, something's going on behind the scenes, and I think that's a very bad impression, you know, to be projecting to the public. I guess the other thing I want to ask is I mean, one of the justifications for this is that it will bring people into town and bring more business into town. Now, I can see that that might be the case on Saturday, but and I have to say I don't spend a lot of my time in downtown Arlington on Sundays, but it's my impression that most of the businesses are open on Saturdays but not Sundays, so I don't see how this is going to accomplish anything on Sundays. And you know, finally, I really would like to reiterate, because this is a phenomenon I've seen in other matters, that for an important matter like this, I think it's extremely important to plan it far in advance and give people a lot of time. Not that it's, you know, the first anybody hears of it is June 12th, and you're trying to have a start date of July 7th. I think that's, you know, way too little lead time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi. Mike Bulio, owner of the Book Rack in the center and a member of the Arlington Merchants Group. Just a quick personal statement. Personally, as a non-business owner, I'm excited about the idea. As a business owner who's open Saturday and Sunday, you know, I always tell people our biggest challenge as a retail establishment in this day and age is getting people out of their house. And once they're out of their house, I'll take that task of getting them into my store after they've left their house over actually getting them off their couch. Nothing, I mean, we are blessed to be well supported by this town, and I'm very appreciative of that. So I think this has a lot of potential to be good for my business. In addition to that, I have a small, short comment from the Arlington Merchants Group. Just on behalf of the center merchants, we're excited the town is entertaining some outside-of-the-box thinking, bringing a beer garden to the center. As local business owners, excitement and vibrant entertainment that a well-run beer garden can bring is great for our businesses. Evidence from other towns with beer gardens has been positive socially and economically for businesses in the area. In addition, it will add exposure to our recently defined cultural district. We recognize there may be some fine points to work out, but Aeronaut and Allie Carter from the town have shown a great spirit and willingness to tweak the proposal along the way. We believe the beer garden will be a win for the town, the residents, and the businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Janice Hayes Cha, and I live at 96 Churchill Ave. And my husband and I and our kids moved to Arlington in 2004 from Cambridge, and because we had a surprise set of twins, and so we have like 4 kids. And I have to say, I was sad to leave Cambridge because of the ability to kind of walk around, have a lot of street life, have things to do. And we loved to see Arlington grow and prosper and become more kind of walkably friendly. And we also used to joke about the idea that we loved to drive by in the minivan and look in the windows of all the restaurants here, because we could never go in them with all our kids. And I guess for 5 years, we took a break from Arlington and lived in Philadelphia for 5 years. And Philadelphia has been very successful in strategically placing both entertainment, public art, and beer gardens to revitalize neighborhoods. And we were thrilled to be able to go to different neighborhoods in the city, have a beer, hang out, and bring our kids. And I think a lot of people don't understand that beer gardens, especially daytime beer gardens, which is what we're really talking about here, can be very family friendly. You can have games, you can have entertainment, you can have puzzles, Jenga games, and lots of non-alcoholic options and food that are very attractive to young families. And having just experienced Porch Fest and seeing all the folks out with strollers and everybody in the community having a great time, I'd be really happy. I want to advocate on behalf, my kids are a little bit older now, but I want to advocate on the behalf of families with young kids who might enjoy coming down in the afternoon with their kids and seeing their friends and being able to socialize and have a beer and listen to some music and play some games. And I think that it's easy to think it's going to be some kind of rowdy bar scene, but that it's exactly, and if it's well run, it can be exactly the opposite of that. So that's all I wanted to say, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Excuse me. My name is Greg Harrison. I'm a resident of 225 Mystic Street. The previous speaker, I don't know her. She's a tough act to follow because she said most of the things I wanted to say, although probably better. Our stories are similar, although I don't have twins. My kids are 10 months and 3.5, and I've never lived in Philadelphia. But I have a short statement. The Cambridge stuff and the walkability is a direct overlap. Used to live there, and my wife and I do like walking around. But I'll be short and sweet. I'm an Arlington resident on Mystic Street. I'm a teacher, occasional beer drinker, beer brewer. I'm in walking distance of Whitmore Park. I think it's a great idea to host a beer garden summer weekends in the park. In my opinion, downtown Arlington would benefit from more offerings like a beer garden and live music and arts. I enjoy having a beer out in the community, but in the 6 years I've lived here in Arlington, I've never just gone out for a beer in town. I tend to do this in one of the neighboring cities and towns, which I find sometimes have a little bit more vibrant downtown life. I've been to similar beer gardens in Massachusetts and around the country, and I found them to be safe, enjoyable, and an overall positive experience in my experience. I have not witnessed people getting inebriated and causing trouble like some residents fear. So one of the reasons I'm here, I have not participated in local government before. I'm a new subscriber to the Arlington Forum. I saw a lot of negative feedback regarding this. I don't know how common. I think you were the one that mentioned that there was some positive feedback as well, so I wasn't sure where we're going with this. I just wanted to put in a voice of support. And so a previous speaker said, who benefits from this type of thing? Well, possibly the business owners downtown. We don't know that yet. Like somebody said, people getting out of their houses and walking around is probably better than sitting at home or going somewhere else. But definitely a local resident that can walk around down there, I would benefit. So there's probably other people like me that would like to walk or drive or cycle downtown, have a beer in the sun. And then one last thing is I have my young kids. I like the Whitmore Park area with them. I don't always go there because it is right on the busy street. We tend to go to the library area instead, so there's still that nice, quiet, area for the people that like their kids in the park area downtown as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
My name is Samuel Butler. I live at 19 Overlook Road. That's my mom.
Hi, Mom.
She looked surprised.
As a result, I have had to learn to be quite loud on occasion, so I apologize for my earlier interjection of Mom about the sidewalks after her time was up. That said, I've looked over the proposals for Whitmore Park. I think the occupancy might have been set a little too high for the footprint of the space. Especially if you're going to be integrating seating, it's definitely not 250. My other concerns are, I believe at least one of the proposals involved cutting down trees and performing some permanent physical alterations to the space to allow for the setup of a stage and some other things along those lines. On one of those, the proposed location for the food vendor to vend food was behind the stage and completely blocked off by the stage from the rest of the park. So the question I would have is how are people expected to reach that? They would have to cross the stage where a band is performing to buy the food, or...
I think I can maybe clarify that. So there is a conversation about changes at the Whitmore Park, but it's totally separate from this. This is park as is, and then there's a separate thread with some public meetings and discussion about a plan for Whitmore.
Okay.
But like
that was not clear.
Okay, yeah, this is the park as you see it today.
Okay, cool. The other concerns I have is, has anyone talked with the chief of Arlington Police about a detail needing to be present or anything along those lines? That wasn't, at least in part of the public discourse that I saw.
That's a part of the alcohol license, so yes, that conversation does happen, yep.
Cool, that's all I got.
Cool. I apologize for interrupting, I was trying to clarify
No,
what was
no,
there.
it's absolutely fine.
Thank you.
You've met my mom, you know how we disclose.
Well, he's the criminal justice major.
There you go, okay. Welcome.
Hello, Christopher Tonkin. I'm the chairman of the Arlington Bicycle Advisory Committee. I live up in the Heights, been a resident for a long time, since 1987, I think. So I really want to support the idea of the Aeronaut Brewery. We're having, I know you know that last year we had a 25th anniversary of the completion of the rail trail in Arlington, a celebration of that. Well, the actual rail trail itself, including Bedford and Lexington, was completed the year after. So we're continuing the celebration, and we have on the 29th of September, which is one of the dates the Aeronaut Brewery is going to be there, we were planning to have a celebration, or part of a 3-town celebration, 1/3 of which is going to be in Arlington at the Jefferson Cutter House. And I think we're very happy to be able to work with the Aeronaut Brewery to make this a much better, a bigger celebration and a bigger draw than it would have been otherwise. We're currently actually in discussions to try and get the governor possibly to come too. So I think it would be great if the governor and other state officials could come and see a great, vibrant downtown Arlington. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Radosha, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Bob Radosha. Questions. How do we plan on securing the boundaries of it, of the garden?
We're mostly just using the fence that's already present.
Even-
Actually,
And wherever there are gaps, Aeronaut will provide temporary fencing to make sure that it's fully enclosed.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, will that mean that the pathway between the Dallin Museum and the post and rail there, will that be closed to the public, that pathway?
No.
No, that'll be open.
That'll be open. Okay. The lost parking. Now, how many spaces are we taking where and for how long?
Mr. Chaplin, could you clarify that?
Believe that during operation, it's 3 parking spaces, but 2 of those are during operation, and then 1 would be lost through the summer for the pod that they would be bringing in to store equipment, and they would be paying us for all of the parking fees associated with the use of those spaces.
Okay. Now, the portable toilets, where are they going?
The initial first planned one would be adjacent to the entrance to the restrooms at the Jefferson Cutter House or at the Cutter Gallery. The second 2 would be aligned with the parking space in the pod in the parking lot if they are necessary.
Okay. You know, using the toilets in the Jefferson Cutter House, the Cutter Museum, I think it's going to set a precedent for use down the road. We're using this for a private purpose, and yet there's a lack of public toilets in the town, restrooms. And now that we can show that this can be used, and there might be some kind of pressure to use it more often. And I'm just concerned about that because it is a gallery, and we're making it available. Somebody's going to be on it, I understand. But there's some valuable paintings in there, and we've got to be careful of that part of it. Now,
Pause, if you would, Bob. I thought that's a meeting room, that floor, where the restrooms are.
Yeah.
They
The
go in-
museum's upstairs.
I thought they were going into the lower level.
Yeah, there is a gallery on the lower level. There's a bit, yes, it's gallery
Yeah.
space.
Okay. And you had some paintings there at one time, I believe. Anyhow, the last thing is, I've always thought of this as Arlington's Lexington Green. It's about the only place we have in the town that we can call it a green, other than the garden. But that was a meeting place, a place for people to gather. I mean, I can't see Lexington doing this on their green. And I consider this our green as public space, and it's being taken away from the public for the most part on the weekend. Not that I'm around on weekends, I won't be there, not my problem, but I hate to see it be taken away from the use as a public tranquil space, an escape room. Especially it's a once in a while kind of thing. A beer garden's a great idea. But, every week, 2 days a week, one day, and whatever it is, an occasional beer garden, I think, is a great thing to do. But after a while, I think it wears down on us. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
And can I just put a plug in, just in that particular area, we have been redesigning and hopefully going to get more use out of, because I've worked on this and I know everyone's referencing all these people that go down in this area. I would put a plug in for the open space by the Uncle Sam Memorial, which also has a visitor information center there. And we have volunteers that staff that. There's green space there, there's bench to sit, and I know that the Uncle Sam committee is always looking not only for more volunteers, but for more people to come down and recognize. A lot of people said, I didn't even realize that was there until we took down that huge tree, which was 100+ years old, but it had to come down. I understand that. So I think the Uncle Sam committee is also looking forward to the additional foot traffic for them to get their message out and kind of publicize that green space there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Mara Vatz. I'm an Arlington resident and a member of the Tree Committee. And I understand this is completely separate from the Whittemore Park redesign, but I've been following that project closely, and there's been a lot of talk about the trees there and the health of the trees. Our tree warden recently determined that 3 of the trees need to be removed, and I was curious to know what considerations have been taken to protect the grounds with so many people so often. The lawn is already in terrible condition with a lot of exposed roots, and I'm just curious to know if there's anything in place to protect the trees that are to remain in the park.
I'm not sure if we do, is that one that's on your list already or no?
I've not heard that concern. We can talk to the tree warden about what he thinks could be an appropriate protection plan. And I'll note that the tree warden and the tree service hired as part of the planning process both have agreed upon there are actually 5 dead or dying trees in the park that need to be removed, not 3.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Just-
I was just thinking of the 3 that were kind of on the lawn. One is a street tree outside the fence, that's a point. But yeah, it would be great if the tree warden could be brought into this discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name's Dave Boggs. I live at 1 Epping Street. I've lived in town about 40 years now. And the town has got a lot more vibrant and exciting ever since we moved here from Chicago a long time ago. And I'm in support of this idea. I think it's great. My question is, I didn't read the original application, but is Aeronaut providing like non-alcoholic options as well?
Yes.
I think that's great. I just want to share some experience up at the Right Lock Farm. They call it family night, Thursdays, and they have music, they have beer, they have wine, they have seltzer, they have fruity bars. I have never seen so many kids in one place, and it's terrific. It's just terrific. So if that type of event starts to happen in Arlington Center, I think it'd be fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Beth Locke. I'm the Executive Director of the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. I believe you have, hopefully in your packets there, a letter of support from the Chamber, and I'm just here tonight to reiterate that. Myself personally, before I wrote the letter, I decided I wanted to visit the beer garden, the Aeronaut Beer Garden in Alston, because I had not ever been to one of these types of beer gardens. So I went about 10 days ago, I went to the beer garden in Alston, and it was, I believe the woman in the back was describing an environment where people are playing games and very relaxed. This was an evening beer garden, which will be different from ours, and yet it very much was that. There were people with their babies in baby Bjorns and their dogs on leashes, playing cornhole and sitting around on pillows. The entertainment was fabulous. I could imagine that the bands that were there would be the type of bands that families would be very much interested in coming to. It wasn't rowdy, and again, it was an evening beer garden, so very different than what we expect to see here. But before I felt comfortable writing the letter of support on behalf of our board, I wanted to visit that, and I would very much say that it was a very positive experience visiting that. Also, I'd like to say that we view this as a very creative way to bring new people to Arlington, and we trust the fact that the town will keep their eye on it. If it's not working, change it up. We see a lot of discussion in social media, in the news, about how retail and the business environment is not what we might like it to be because of online sales, and so we have to think out of the box. We have to be creative, and so that's how we view this proposal. And lastly, I work in the building on the park. I work in the Jefferson Cutter House on the second floor, and I can tell you, while I know there are plenty of people who enjoy it, there really isn't that much traffic in the park. There are people who come and sit there, but not nearly as many as we would like to see. And so anything that we can do to bring more people to the park, I think, is a positive. I also work in the building with the director of the the Dallin Museum, and I can reiterate the fact that they are extremely positive about this. They're excited about having new people come to their museum. We know there are some things we have to deal with, restrooms and that kind of thing, but they're all things that we feel that the town will do a good job of handling and keeping their eye on, and we feel very positive about it. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, welcome.
Rich Pelletier, Eustis Street, Precinct 12. And I have a question. So I went to the barbecue on the Green in Lexington a couple weeks ago. Very similar situation, fun. They charge $5. I know it's only one weekend. That goes to Lab Collaborative, I think. Have we thought about charging $1 per person to go to the park or a charity, something like that? And if Aeronaut would go for that. But then we plant flowers if they were trampled or whatever else.
Yeah. I don't think that that's really been part of the model, but I don't know, did Ally look at anything like that?
So we've internally, thank you, Mr. Chairman, we've internally talked through whether or not some charitable component made sense. I think our concern was based on the concerns expressed about public access to the park, that putting a financial impediment to entry would only further those concerns. I mean, I know $1 or $5 is not, a huge barrier, but I think our feeling was, if you want to come in and check it out, you don't even have to buy a beer. You can come in and enjoy the the socialization, the community gathering. So I think that's why we avoided, something of that nature. I believe Aeronaut, though, has committed to giving table space to a local nonprofit so that there could be at least sort of face time and potential for, fundraising or just connections made by a nonprofit. So I think that's at least a start to that. And then we can, I'm happy to take a look at whether or not there's a way we can, provide some further local benefit if it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Ruderman, welcome.
Good evening, members of the board. Michael Ruderman, 9 Alton Street, probably about a 3.5-minute walk from Whittemore Park. I think this is a very interesting proposal that has gotten better in the last 2 weeks of the ad hoc public comment period. I'm very happy to hear that they're going to be bringing chairs to add to the comfort and accessibility of the public. My question is the $400 fee fair and commensurate? I understand that Aeronaut is taking on a lot of risk and they're taking on all the upfront costs, but to me that feels like a very, very low cash payment to the town, especially since there's going to be wear and tear on the asset, the condition of the grass. It's going to take a beating over the course of the summer. And I would offer to you one way of looking at the cost to use the space as a cash payment back to the town would be to consider what any one of a number of landscaping companies would propose for a fee for aerating and reseeding and rehabilitating that lawn after a lot of use over the summer. I think if you took that number and used that as a fair price for the wear and tear on the town asset, I hope that the rest of the proposal is approved, and I hope that it is as successful as the proponents hope it to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rudin, that's a good about the money and the price. We did talk about that 2 weeks ago. Mr. Chapdelaine, do you want to reprise maybe that conversation?
Sure. So Mr. Rudin was absolutely correct. The proposed permit fee would be $400 for the season, as well as recouping the lost parking spaces, as I mentioned in response to another speaker earlier. as well as Aeronaut paying for any police details that are associated with it, or renting. Well, that's the town side. As Mr. Rudman also mentioned, they are, there's quite a bit of startup costs for them. So I think the way we've viewed this and we're recommending to the board is this is a pop-up. This is innovative. This is starting something new. If it works and it's successful, we're going to take a totally fresh look at what the right amount of money to collect from Aeronaut or another vendor would be for this use. But I think there's risk on their part, there's risk on our part. We're trying to create it. We're trying to make something happen, and that's why we're not trying to put a barrier to entry via cost. Okay. That's my thought.
Thank you.
And I just want to make two quick statements, if I could, Mr. Chairman. First of all, to come to this, you do not have to drink beer or any alcohol. You don't even have to purchase anything if you don't want to, but there will be food there. There will be the opportunity if you want to have a beer, but if you want to just come on down and grab a Coke, you know, we even suggested having a kids menu, and they said they were going to work with the Arlington restaurants and eateries that sign up for that. And then the second thing is, to that last point, just because we're saying 250 people, you know, every Saturday in July, that's, we hope if it hits its stride and it's running all four cylinders. I'm not going to say we can guarantee that because, I mean, I've grown up in Arlington pretty much all my life, and I'm always amazed by pretty much, they say Arlington goes away for the summer. It really does get kind of dormant there. So I don't want anyone to think, I mean, I hope it's that successful each and every time, but I don't anticipate that. So I just wanted to stress that, you know. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Ellen Fermini, and I also live on Pleasant Street in Arlington. I just have two questions. Arlington Town Day, I absolutely love all of the vendors that are at Whittemore Park. Where are they going?
Whittemore, sorry.
Yeah.
So are no beer garden
Can I answer
for that time?
What part of the agreement has been that, and Mrs. Kropelka can correct me if I'm wrong, the beer garden, if everything they meet is successful, they'll be over on Lamson Way, which is the street as you go down Not Your Average Joe's, back in the municipal parking lot, so that all those events that happen there on Town Day will happen there. The beer garden will not be there.
Okay. All right. Also, I didn't see on the proposal how much the beer is going to cost, how much the drinks are going to cost, because is it going to be comparable to all of the restaurants who serve beer and wine and pay thousands of dollars for their liquor permit?
I actually, yeah, Mr. Chaplin.
So Aeronaut's permit application states that the beers would cost between $7 and $8 a beer. They're standing up behind you. I think they could probably answer what non-alcoholic drinks might cost.
Yeah.
Or is that comparable?
Yeah, I mean, I can, from my personal sampling of the beers of Arlington, it's at least in the right range. Yeah.
Probably on the little high
Just
end.
a comment on that.
Maybe high, yeah.
They have one specific type of beer. If you go to another establishment, is either Bud Light or another local microbrew. So for a local microbrew, I think that's right in the range.
Yeah, but for a more mass-produced beer, you can definitely find it cheaper in other restaurants.
Okay, better, because I'm just afraid that they're going to really lowball the prices of the beer. And so all
Yeah.
of the restaurants who would normally make a profit on this are going to lose.
Yeah, no, they're definitely higher end. They're more like they're more of a crafted brew, and so they charge a premium for that. It's yeah, so no, they won't be undercutting in that way.
Okay, thank you.
The line never ends.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
My name's Ron Friedlander. I'm one of the owners of Aeronaut Brewing, and it was very interesting to hear all of that. I just want to thank everyone who's come up and spoke in support, but I also want to thank people who've voiced concerns, because I know it's a new, unusual thing. It was described as creative. So it's interesting to hear these things. We want to work with everyone and try to make something that works for the town. So I was kind of taking some notes on some of the things that were brought up, and I thought maybe I could speak to some of them. Let's see. Stage. One question was asked about the stage and that being left up. We have a temporary stage. It can be put up and taken down every day. And we actually just walked over there and checked to see that it would fit in the space, and it works pretty well. So that wouldn't be left out during the week. That was one question. food vendors, we did put out an RFP. We've heard back from 3 businesses from Arlington who are interested so far, which is good. And we actually would like to task them with all the non-alcoholic beverage sales if we can, because we do beer, that's kind of our thing, and as long as there's non-alcoholic beverages present, that's good for us. So that was another thing. Let's see. Oh, yeah, family-friendly stuff that was brought in. Yeah, we're definitely family-friendly. We do this at the brewery. We have people bringing in their kids. In Alston, we do that as well, and it's been very successful. People bring their families, their dogs in Alston. We can't have animals in the brewery, but we do have a lot of families, people with kids. We actually used to have a day on Sundays at the brewery where we encouraged people to come in with their kids, parents, and it got so popular that we had so many strollers in there, we had to train all of our staff how to deal with those, keeping the aisles clear and everything. So it's very, people like to go out, have a beer. It's kind of like, I kind of think of it like, the word pub, it's short for public house, because I think there was a time where it was very popular for people to go bring their families to bars and have a beer, and it was a family-friendly space. And I think we're kind of seeing a return to that with local microbreweries and the kinds of events that we do. And so we think that would really work in this town. And pretty much everywhere we've done it, it's been very positive. And that's why I think you're probably noticing a lot of things like this popping up in Boston, in Alston, and other towns around here. So I think that about covers my notes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. You already heard from me a couple weeks ago. Emily Shea, owner of Kickstand, longtime Arlington resident. Ron actually answered a couple questions. I wanted to clarify that they're not providing non-alcoholic. And I'm just wondering, the vote is happening tonight, is that correct?
That's
up to the board.
Okay,
It's,
maybe.
I think probably yes.
There seem to me to be some gaps still as far as whether there's going to be food actually in there. I know people have submitted, I didn't submit a proposal because it was, given my business, not a feasible thing to do. And I appreciate the pause to consider September sometime in August, but I would like a little more clarification around exactly what we're going to look at in August, what's going to determine whether it's a success or not, because I can guarantee it's going to be a mixed bag. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to have problems. What is it that is going to be thumbs up, let's go, full steam ahead? Is it going to be, oh, Kickstand is actually suffering, let's put a little pause on it. I don't want to make it about me, but my business is the closest one, and I'm just wondering what it is we're going to look at in August to determine whether it's a good thing or not.
Know that in August. We're going to go ahead. You want to
Everything
take
you've
it?
heard tonight, what effect is it having on the lawn? Have they kept it clean? All these issues, we don't know. We're all admitting we don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah, sorry. Adam?
So I think the number one thing we're going to look at is safety and security. We'll rely on the police officers who are working in the police details and other town staff that may attend either personally or professionally to just view how it's operating, how safe it is. And if there's any, serious safety concerns, I think that would be the first and most important thing that I'd want to bring back to the board for consideration. I think we want to look at compliance, right? We want to make sure that minors aren't being served. I think that's also, maybe that's one, and say, otherwise is 1A for safety
1A,
and security. So I think those are the major things. Beyond that, we will be utilizing the survey that Ally put a draft copy into the Selectmen's report. We're going to continue to tweak that survey. In fact, a resident emailed Ally, I think at 4:30 today, with some suggestions, and she said she would incorporate that into the survey. Beyond that, I know we've already engaged with you. I think we want to engage with other businesses, and we want to try to find a way to be protective and see if there's a safe way we can do this confidentially, but really have a straight talk conversation of what are your numbers look like? This doesn't feel good, or I'm not sure, is it better year over year? Are you worse year over year? And if the cumulative is worse, then we have to think about it and make a recommendation to the board. If the cumulative is better, then that speaks to what it is too. So I think we're going to try to look at safety, security, general success, and then talk with not just you, but all the business owners and see, not everybody might be willing to share how they're doing, but I think we'll want to have some solid sense of how people are doing to able to make a comprehensive recommendation.
So in relation to that, the conversation about the fee and the risk that they're taking, I would just point out that the risk that we brick and mortar businesses take in town is, I think, without a doubt much greater than the risk they're taking. I know they have to buy some equipment and all, but I hope that that factors in to the consideration of a reasonable fee and also what risk they really are taking. And it's not just me, it's the other businesses in town as well. So,
Thank you.
Thanks. And I just want to say also, thank you. I think this is great thinking outside the box. I know you guys are well-intentioned in the idea is to bring more life to the downtown. I just want to make sure we move more slowly, and I will restate that I think it's too many days for too many hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
We have
Can we
two-
get it?
Yeah. We got two people standing up, and we'll let those two go, and then we'll finish up after that, I think.
And
Yeah.
I know I spoke in the earlier
Yeah.
open, I know I spoke in the earlier open forum, but now that I've listened to everybody, I would just want to make sure I got this right. The town is charging less than $20 a day to Aeronaut for each time they're in the park. 21 days, $400. The math looks like it's between $17 and $20 per pop-up day.
You're about the right neighborhood, yeah.
Gosh, that doesn't pay for grass seed. That to me is a disconnect, and I wondered. The other thing is, I hadn't thought about the tobacco smoke thing and cleaning up cigarette butts and people with asthma and whether this was or wasn't going to be smoke-free. So, but I hadn't thought about that before, and so I'm just raising it.
Thank you.
I actually don't know the answer to that one too either. Does Aeronaut do you run them sorry?
Smoke-free, I mean.
Always smoke-free. Okay. Last one.
Hi, my name is Beth
Could you
Malofchek.
Thank you very much.
My name is Beth Malofchek. I live at 20 Russell Street. I did email a list of my concerns about this proposal. First of all, I would like to ask why Whittemore Park? Why this location? Particularly when we heard about how appealing and how many features Uncle Sam Plaza has. Right across the street, it's level, graded level. There's no concern at the moment for having to protect heritage trees. I'd like to know if the council, the committee, I'd like to respectfully know what the best practices are that we as a town have learned about the loss of that. Is it an over 100-year-old shade tree? I am very disappointed at the thought that a commercial enterprise is being given exclusive use, essentially the entire summer, the weekend, prime time, of this shady public park space. It's one of, if not the only, public park
if you could
with shaded park benches.
So just some of this has been covered. If you want to stick to the part that's new, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, why not Uncle Sam Plaza? Why not the parking lot where the farmers market holds their event? And I agree with the woman who spoke from Kickstand, why so many days and so many hours? I'm concerned that it's precedent setting. Could a competing brewery come to you with a proposal for exclusive use of Monotony Rocks Park for every weekend in the summer? Or Robbins Hill, great view there. You know, I'd like to sip a glass of white wine on the hill looking at the Boston skyline. So is this precedent setting? And if it's not precedent setting, then why is this opportunity being given to this particular company with, from the remarks that I've heard here tonight, seemingly little overview, a 2-week lead time in this? Maybe that's not right, but that's the impression I've been given. Thank you very much. I love Arlington. I use the bike trail frequently. I love your green spaces. And I look forward to attending tree committee meetings because I believe that we need to defend our tree canopy. So I'm very hopeful that there will be oversight about protecting the park and possibly including what that suggestion was for repairing and reseeding the lawn in the potential fees that may be revisited. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Chaplin.
So town council reminded me, I should state, and I should have said this to start, this may seem like semantics, but I think it is actually important. Though called Whittemore Park, it is not a public park by statutory definition. It's property under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. So Public parkland is a special statutory creature that has special protections and is under the jurisdiction of the Parks and Recreation Commission. So at least to that last point, there is no precedent about other public parks in Arlington being set by this, because this in fact is not statutorily a park, for what it's worth.
All right, so we made it through our list. I look back to our board. Mrs. Mahan.
Well, should I make a motion to put it on the table?
Yep.
I'd like to move approval for the Aeronaut Beer Garden for summer 2018 for 4 Saturdays only in July, no Sundays. August Saturdays and Sundays. And I don't know if I should include in the motion, well, I don't have to include in the motion that we will revisit this at our August meeting, as well as Saturdays and Sundays in September, with the exception of Town Day.
Subject to all conditions.
All conditions contained there, and including some more things that I'm hearing the town manager and the chair take down tonight that will.
We've got a motion and a second.
Second.
Mr. Hurd beat you to it.
Oh, sorry. Shoot.
Discussion?
I thought you were looking for a second. Well, I mean, you know, as with all issues that come before us, there's arguments on each side. But, you know, it really isn't so quick. This is the same group that we used for a beer garden last Town Day. And from all reports, everything went well in terms of them meeting their responsibilities, what was required of them, the satisfaction of people at Town Day really enjoying it. So it's not, to me, such a quick decision. We've actually had a trial run, if you will, with this company. And I think anything we can do to increase foot traffic. I mean, we can't move them across to Uncle Sam Park. The fence isn't there. There isn't the parking behind it. I mean, there's too many issues with that. However, those who are concerned, even though this is public access, they still can walk in there. They don't have to buy anything. There's no charge to get in there. That they could go across the street to Uncle Sam Park if that concerns them, or even better, out here to the beautiful gardens which we have. So I just think there's alternatives to some of these things which have been brought up. So I'm going to support it. I think let's try it. I'm glad we're going to talk about it at our August meeting. Let's measure, let's see how it's going, let's see what's happened. But as I say, to me, they've already proven themselves by how they behaved at our last Town Day.
Mrs. Mahan?
And I would just state, because I heard once or twice a question about private events on town property. We've done this before. We've done it with Town Hall, and we have different rates. If you come in and you're a wedding or a for-profit company or corporation, there's one rate for that. But then if you're an Arlington group, a booster club, you know, sports banquet night, or you know, something to do with the drama or arts, sometimes, and it's an Arlington drama, arts, or sports, it's little or no fee for that. We've done it with the Robbins Memorial Gardens. We've used that for private events, and again, it's based on what the use is for. If we have visiting dignitaries from Nagaokio, and we want to, you know, entertain them out in the gardens, the town pays whatever the town fee is, versus if you're a wedding or something else. And we also do this with the Robbins Whittemore House, which is behind the Robbins Library, and again, the same thing. There's different rates in terms of, you know, if it's an Arlington-based nonprofit or municipal entity group going in there versus if you're doing it as a fundraiser, a wedding, things like that. So we've done that before, where we've tried to look at, and I could go on to other things. I'm just trying to stay in this general area where we've taken town property and sort of partnered with, also the brewmaster, if my memory serves me correct, is also an Arlington resident. So my thing is, if we can look at our town-owned properties, that if they're not being used, if they are, then it's functioning the way it should, to give something a try. So there has been precedent for this before. This isn't the first time. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hurd.
To organize my notes here. So I'd like to start by saying that I'm going to support the beer garden. I was excited about it when it first came before us. When I first heard about it, it was right after we had just gotten through with, when they had the music play.
Oh, the Porch
Porch
Fest.
Fest.
Yep.
Sorry. And this came up, and during Porch Fest, I was saying, wow, I wish there was more opportunities to hear music, live music in Arlington, and then this came up, and that fit into that mold. One of the things that struck me initially was the number of days, and I think that's been one of the major concerns that we've heard from citizens is the sheer number of days. I think we've now come to a good agreement. It's a good compromise. Initially, when I saw September, I didn't think that, I was wondering why we were even considering September, because I think at that point after Labor Day, people are going to get burnt out. So it's good to know that we're now going to see that. We're going to rely on the public safety officials to tell us how it's going from a public safety perspective, but we also can see what the usage is going into August, and that will certainly be a consideration. There's no point in shutting it down if all of a sudden the usage is tailing off. There's a lot of talk about benefits, who this benefits, why we're doing it, and the licensing fee. To me, we are doing this to benefit the businesses in Arlington Center. For the past few months, we've talked about vacant storefronts and how to revitalize our business districts. There's a few ways to do that: parking, long-term infrastructure changes. But this seems to me like a very simple way to get foot traffic in town. And the reason for me that it's in Whittemore Park, if that's the right terminology, is that that's the pass-through. That's where there's other locations that would be appropriate for this, Town Hall Gardens, or some other locations in open space in town, but this particular place with the bike path is where a lot of people pass through our town, and it might not be specifically that a bicyclist is going to stop and go to the beer garden, it's just that they see it's there and they know it's there. So to me, this is a good location for it. I think it's a good compromise. I think it will be a good family-friendly event. I intend bringing my boys there. And I know at least one local vendor that's been contacted about participating for food service, so I do appreciate that. I do have a couple questions. One that just came up regarding non-alcoholic drinks. So it's my understanding that there will be non-alcoholic drinks there, right? So if the local food vendors aren't going to do non-alcoholic drinks, Aeronaut will take care of that, correct? Right. And regarding the 2 drinks, how is Aeronaut going to police that somebody has just 2 drinks?
I think you're referring to the
2-drink max.
2 drink per person.
Yes.
So my understanding of that was that when someone comes up to buy a drink, they can only get 2 drinks per person per ID. So they can only get 2 drinks per person. Or are you referring to 2 drinks throughout the event?
So isn't it true? So my understanding was that
it's
it's a 2-drink limit.
The event per person.
Unless you get food.
Right, unless you get food. Yeah. It's a town bylaw that in any restaurant, any establishment that serves alcohol, not private clubs, but you can have 2 drinks, but in order to have a 3rd drink, you must have food served with that drink. Mm-hmm. So that's the town bylaw.
I don't know. So you're going to have a separate food bank. These Aeronaut bartenders aren't going to know who got food. Mm-hmm. So my simple solution that I thought that you were going to say was that, you know, your wristband has punches on it.
Yeah, how'd you do it in the fall? You did it for the beer garden here at Town Day.
So there's a few ways of doing it. You could do it with the wristbands with 2, where you pull off two tabs when you get in, and then once you get past that, you could limit it at 2, and then that satisfies that requirement. Another alternative is if you want to be able to have more with food, we could have something where the food vendor is somehow providing tickets, which allow people to then go and get another drink. So we've talked through this. I wasn't sure if that was a requirement here, so something we can address.
It will be.
So one of my responses to some of the feedback about the effect that this will have on citizens in the business district was that it's a 2-drink maximum. I think that that was good because it also said, you know, we are saying that this is here to benefit the businesses. So at 2 drinks, you know, they're going to have a couple drinks and move on. I don't know if that dramatically changes your business model or your interest in doing the beer garden, but that was my understanding, was that we were going to have a 2-drink maximum. I guess, subject to the bylaw, if there's a way to determine if someone has gotten food, then, you know, I'm open to the alternative.
Sorry, Kevin or Adam, I don't know.
Who are you looking at?
I don't know exactly. Who wants to go? Kevin, go ahead.
Please.
Oh, he's more important than I am, good.
That's always a leading claim.
Yeah.
I actually don't believe, this is a nuance, it's not, I don't believe it's in the town bylaws, it's in Selectmen's policy for the issuance of liquor licenses. But I do think, that from what you're saying, that we'll have to work with Aeronaut to put a process in place with the bracelets and something with the food vendor to work on that it's, I think you're saying you could get more than 2 if you're buying food, like other establishments in town.
Right. I'd be open to discussing that. It was just my understanding that it was just going to be 2 drinks per patron of the beer garden.
Are you saying that's not our policy? What'd you
It
just
is your
say?
policy.
Right, right.
Yeah.
2 drinks.
So they have to abide by that.
After that, you
Period,
gotta order
right.
food.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make one, I spoke to a manager at Not Your Average Joe's, which certainly has to be one of the closest restaurants to the Whittemore Park area, and loved it, thought it would be a great idea, thought it would increase foot traffic, thought it would bring them more business, so.
And I did too, based on the idea that somebody would come and have a couple drinks and then wanted to go get dinner or whatnot after. And I think it still will.
Also at
Anytime
Joe's,
you
you're
get,
saying?
no, I didn't
Oh.
talk to them, but
Oh.
anytime you get people in there, it's gonna help the businesses, for sure. It's just,
So I had 2 thoughts that I want to share. One was that someone already said this, but I thought it was very true, that this is a proposal that got better, which I'm really very happy about. And the other aspect, and it doesn't have to and won't, I'm sure, stop getting better at this point. We're going to start doing this, we're going to learn from it, we're going to iterate on it, and we'll see how we'll do it. And we'll see how it goes, which is like, so the second element of it, which is this is for Arlington, this is an innovative thing. We've never done anything like it, and this is us taking a chance to see how it works, and we will evaluate it, and if we like it, we'll keep it, and if we don't, we won't. And the thing that I'm really excited about is that rather than talk about it forever, we're going to actually give it a try and see what actually comes out of it. All right, so we've got a motion from motion from Diane Mahan, seconded by John Hurd. Is there any further discussion before we take the vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0 vote to approve the beer garden. All right.
Thank you.
See you in a few weeks. Yeah.
Excuse me.
All right, next up on the agenda is the Selectmen Awards Committee, and I was derelict.
Don't worry about it.
Oops.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to,
People, we still have a meeting going, so if you want to take your conversation outside, and you're welcome to stay, of course, for the rest of the meeting. Mr. Greeley.
yes, so really just a quick update on this, Mr. Chairman, that we appoint a committee at our next meeting, July 16th.
Yep.
That we appoint a committee and that we ask that we, at that point, set a date for when we actually would have the awards night, and then task that committee with the advertising and the accepting of nominations for the different selectmen's awards, and then they recommend to us those nominees, and we accept or not, and we add to if we would like. There's, in the past, the tradition has been we've had the rule, no selectman can win a selectman's award. And I just wanted to see if the board has any particular feelings on that tonight or not. I mean, maybe if we said no living selectman should get a selectman's award, but you know what I mean? One of the awards named after my father, so I guess we do allow that. If you die, we'll give you an award, apparently, or something. But.
Wow, there's incentive for that.
So the trouble is, the fall, the last time we did this in 2013, we started much earlier and did the awards in June, was it, Marie?
That feels right.
Will you look at this crowd here? So ladies and gentlemen.
Tell me about the jacket.
Well, last time we started in April, May of 2012, and we had the actual event in June of 2013?
June 27th of 13. Took us almost, April was just a little over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're late anyhow, but.
No, we're gonna do the same, it's gonna be about the same timeline, I think.
No, because that was a year timeline you just described, from May to the next June.
14 months, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So we're talking about 5-6 months now.
Oh, you're saying you want to keep it
Well,
on
we
that?
should give them out in 2018, that's the 5-year.
Oh,
We
okay.
just should have started, anyhow, here we are, I don't think there's any problem getting this done. But in the fall, late fall, we're gonna have a special town meeting. We have an election on November 6th, we have Thanksgiving. So right now, just for you to think about, I'm thinking of maybe November 15th. That's a Thursday night, that's the Thursday night before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is November 22nd. I think if we go after Thanksgiving, I don't know that the Select Tones, we have our show.
That's right.
That we'll be putting on. So anyhow, just an update on that, sir, and let's really start kicking things off at the next meeting.
Okay. And I apologize, Mr. Greeley. I dropped the ball.
No worries, sir.
Anybody else comments on awards? I guess on your question, I would say ruling out selectmen to win the awards, I think is good policy.
Yeah, we had two that were recommended for awards, and I just felt that's too self-serving.
Yeah, I agree.
I wasn't one of them, but maybe you, Diane, by the way. But no.
Shocking.
Do you mean current selectmen or
What,
you mean
John?
selectmen or?
Any living.
Any living selectman, basically.
I mean, it looks like
I
it's
mean, really,
self-serving
I wouldn't think that.
These are our awards, why would we give,
Yeah.
to each other.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and I guess maybe like one exception might be is that if you're, in the past, you've given to groups.
Yeah.
Like the Friends of Robin and the AAF, and the selectman is a member of that group, I'm not gonna spread it.
That's right.
Apparently, I'm not close enough to the microphone.
Oh, but as you all know, that we did finally take down that whiteboard we had here. I do have a dream of getting the Selectman Award plaques on that wall there eventually, so maybe we can get
That's
that
your
done by
dream?
the end of the year.
Oh, boy. I have a dream.
No, there's 5 awards, so 5 plaques. will be up
Okay.
there.
All right. Any further questions or comments for Mr. Greeley?
No.
All right. Do you need to vote tonight of any sort? Okay.
If that's all okay with all of you.
Sounds good to me. New business, Mrs. Kropelka.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Heim.
I have 2 pieces of new business, Mr. Chairman. One, I wanted to note that with the excellent work of Marie and the Office of the Board of Selectmen and the town clerk and Representative Sean Garbely, we are ahead of schedule with respect to the special legislation that's been submitted from the last town meeting. So all of that has been submitted. Representative Garbely is getting a lot of it in front of the legislature very, very quickly. Whether or not that means it'll actually be signed into law quickly, I don't know. And then similarly, I want to make a few notes about approved town meeting articles. So the special town meeting article back from our zoning recodification was approved by the Attorney General's office. So we now have a new recodified zoning bylaw. And also, the Attorney General's office moved very, very swiftly on, 1, approving the moratorium on recreational marijuana, and 2, on approving the article with respect to gender-neutral language in the bylaws. So, while you are not yet a select board, because the special legislation hasn't been passed yet, the town clerk and my office are pretty well underway in terms of making gender-neutral language available for all the bylaws, and we'll make sure to submit that to the selectmen for your comment and any things you'd like to see. So there's a little bit more process involved in that. Thank you.
Kevin, it's going to be the first Select Board Awards.
Select Board, yeah, you're right, sir.
Good.
Only one piece of new business. Last week, I joined, I think it was 13 other municipal executives, some mayors, some managers, to sign the autonomous vehicle MOA that the board voted to authorize me to sign back in January. That finally came to fruition down in the Seaport District. Pretty exciting. I think it does really demonstrate some of the strengths in this region coming together, working with MassDOT and DCR to streamline this, for this technology to be tested. Guessing, whether or not we support or any individual likes or supports the technology, it's coming. So let's be part of figuring it out and how it's going to work and what its impact on our roadways might be. On the funny side, they had us sign what was like a publisher clearinghouse check size MOA in like a weird signing ceremony, and the angle of everybody signing it was ridiculous. And then only coupled that with me shaking the governor's hand, who's like twice my height, with Secretary Jay Ash, who's taller than the governor, taking a picture from up above and having me look ridiculous, shaking the governor's hand. So that was some good comic relief. And I did get to drive in or ride in an autonomous vehicle as part of it, and I think it was a Nissan Versa that had all of the equipment on it, and the company's name was Newtonomy. And there was someone sitting in the driver's seat with their hands off the wheel and someone guiding them in the passenger seat. But this thing drove itself. It was pretty herky-jerky turning, like it was like very stilted turning, but it saw pedestrians in a crosswalk. That was the scariest point for me. It was like, okay, there's actually people in a crosswalk right now. Like, is this car gonna see them? But it recognized them, it stopped, and there was another instance where it came up upon a delivery truck parked in sort of like in the travel lane with a double yellow to its left, and then oncoming vehicles, and it was actually more cautious than any of us would have been. Any of us would have there was enough space for the car to go through. It waited until all the oncoming vehicles were gone before it proceeded around the car. So it's all anecdotal, but the technology is real, and it's coming. So
It's
thanks
called
for the board's
Skynet,
support on
which
that.
is weird.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Cool.
Nope, no new business, sir.
Just a FYI, point of information, and I know the manager, Mr. Rademacher, and police chief and acting chief are aware that National Grid has locked out all their union workers starting this morning. And they're replacing their workers with managers, high-level managers, and individuals they're bringing on to train to provide that service, which I just want to make sure all the department heads and others, and my colleagues on the board know that, because I just want to make sure everyone's cognizant of that if they're on a National Grid work site in terms of a town employee, and they see something that they perceive, there might be a little more heightened awareness in terms of, as well as developing a strategy that if they do see something, and I'm not talking about a routine National Grid call, I'm talking about something that, involves public safety, that I'm assuming those discussions have been had, as well as if you do need some sort of chain of command or hierarchy, that you are concerned about, public safety, and whether, I won't go into all the specifics in that because it's my union hat. I don't know if I'm...
No, I think you're right on, and I'll verify that. Primarily engineering and fire are ready and aware of that.
Yeah, I just want them to be aware, and they know what's a regular National Grid plug fix versus...
It's dangerous and
Right,
trench repair.
so, okay.
Good, thank you.
Anyone's welcome to the picket lines, but anyway.
I also have no items for this evening.
Move to adjourn.
That's you. You have to
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.